You ever notice how government logic works backward? Yeah, it's like they took common sense, threw it in a blender, and poured it over a pile of paperwork. You ask them a question that requires real logic, something simple, and suddenly it becomes classified information. Because in government land, real logic is dangerous. It threatens the structure built on nonsense. They tell you they're here to serve the people. That's the slogan. But take a good look around. Do you see service or do you see control? Because the truth is the government doesn't serve the people. It manages them like inventory. You're not a citizen. You're a data point, a statistic in a spreadsheet, a number they can manipulate. And every time they screw something up, which is every other Tuesday, they tell you it's for your safety. We're increasing taxes for your safety. We're invading another country for your safety. We're watching your emails and tracking your phones for your safety. You notice the pattern? They make you scared, then they sell you safety. Classic government logic: create the problem, then charge admission to the solution. See, in government logic, money isn't real unless it's going to the military. You can't get a dime for healthcare, schools, or fixing the roads, but they'll write a blank check for bombs. Because somehow, in their version of logic, peace is achieved by dropping explosives. They don't fund peace, they finance war. And they call it defense. Yeah, the same way a burglar calls breaking into your house property inspection. And they love paperwork. Oh, the paperwork. Bureaucracy is the only religion where the Holy Scripture is forms in triplicate. You need a permit to build a house, a license to drive, a registration to vote, an ID to exist, and a receipt for being alive. They track everything except accountability. That's the one thing they can't seem to locate in all their databases. And if you point out the hypocrisy, suddenly you're unpatriotic. Because patriotism to them means obedience. You're not supposed to question the people who lie to you. You're supposed to salute them. Government logic says the best citizens are the quiet ones, the ones who believe everything, pay everything, and question nothing. You know what's really illegal? Real thinking, independent thought, the kind that doesn't fit neatly on their forms or align with their narratives. They don't want people who think, they want people who believe. Belief is controllable. Thought isn't. Thought questions authority. Belief worships it. And they've built this whole illusion that voting fixes everything. Every 4 years they let you pick between two versions of the same malfunctioning system. Choose your flavor of disappointment, folks. Doesn't matter who wins. The same lobbyists still get paid. The same corporations still call the shots. And you still get the bill. That's government logic. Change the mask, keep the monster. They'll tell you we're all in this together. No, we're not. You're in it, I'm in it, but they're flying above it in private jets. They bail out banks, not people. They fund wars, not water systems. They sell dreams during elections and deliver excuses afterward. And every new law they pass to protect you somehow takes away one more of your freedoms. Isn't that interesting? They protect you by restricting you. They regulate your life while deregulating corporations. They criminalize your mistakes while legalizing theirs. That's not governance, that's theater. Political theater with bad actors and worse scripts. Here's the truth nobody likes to say. Governments don't solve problems, they need them. Problems justify power. The bigger the crisis, the tighter the leash. So they manufacture emergencies, exaggerate threats, and call it leadership. Real logic says, fix the cause. Government logic says, fund the symptom. And don't even get me started on their priorities. They'll spend billions to explore Mars while people on Earth can't afford rent. They'll talk about innovation while cutting education. They'll pass bills overnight when it benefits corporations, but they'll take decades to raise the minimum wage. And if you ask why, they'll tell you it's complicated. Of course it's complicated. They made it that way on purpose. Complexity is how they hide corruption. Real logic is simple. If something doesn't work, you fix it. Government logic is different. If something doesn't work, you rename it, add a committee, and throw money at it until everyone forgets what the problem was. They tell you to trust the system, but the system is designed to keep you too busy to notice it doesn't work. You work, you pay, you vote, you obey, and they call that freedom. Meanwhile, they make the rules, break the rules, and write new ones to make the old crimes legal. That's not logic. That's legalized insanity. And if you dare question it, oh boy, suddenly you're spreading misinformation, because only the people who lie for a living are allowed to decide what the truth is. Isn't that convenient? The same folks who can't balance a budget or tell you the truth about war are the official referees of reality. So yeah, real logic is illegal. Because if people actually started thinking clearly, there'd be a revolution before lunch. Real logic would expose the system for what it is, a profit machine dressed up as patriotism. Real logic would remind people that power only exists when we believe it does. But they don't want you logical. They want you loyal. They want you entertained, distracted, and divided. Because if you're busy fighting each other, you'll never notice who's picking your pocket. So next time you hear a politician talk about the greater good, check your wallet and your freedoms, because government logic always costs you both. And if that makes me cynical, good. Cynicism is just realism with experience. You ever notice how every time the government steps in to fix something, that's when it really starts to fall apart? It's like watching a guy with a hammer try to perform brain surgery. Every swing makes it worse. But he keeps saying, relax, I'm a professional. Government logic thrives on contradiction. It's a machine built on confusion. The left hand's writing laws while the right hand's erasing rights, and the whole thing runs on the fumes of your patience and your paycheck. They tell you they're maintaining order, but they're really maintaining disorder. They don't clean up messes. They rearrange them so they look new. It's a trick as old as power itself. Create the chaos, then sell yourself as the cure. You ever see how this works? They start a problem, panic the public, then roll in like heroes to fix it with your money and your freedom. They make the disease and call themselves the doctor. Take war, for example. They arm one side, fund the other, then look shocked when the whole region goes up in flames. Oh dear, they say, someone should step in. So they send troops, drop bombs, rebuild what they destroyed, and hand the bill to you. That's not defense. That's a business model. The government's the only place where failure earns a promotion. Every disaster is an opportunity for expansion, another committee, another department, another tax. The worse things get, the more powerful they become. They can't have peace because peace is bad for business. Peace doesn't need policies, speeches, or surveillance. Peace doesn't need a budget, so they keep things just messy enough to justify their existence. They talk about fighting crime while making sure poverty never disappears. They talk about fixing health care while negotiating with the people who profit when you stay sick. They talk about ending corruption while signing deals in private. The contradictions aren't mistakes, they're the design. And the best part, they make you think you're part of it. We the people, they call it, as if you're on the same team. You're not on the team, you're in the audience, and they're charging admission. They create rules so complex nobody can follow them, then fine you for breaking them. They build systems that guarantee failure, then blame you when it fails. They want obedient citizens, not capable ones, because a capable person sees through the act. An obedient one just pays and nods. Government logic is a masterpiece of doublespeak. They name everything the opposite of what it does. The Patriot Act takes your privacy. The Freedom Bill limits your freedom. The Defense Department attacks whoever it wants. Words don't mean anything anymore. They're camouflage. You're not supposed to understand. You're supposed to agree. The more confused you are, the easier you are to control. They treat crisis like currency. Remember when every problem was unprecedented? That's how they get you. Make it sound like the sky's falling, then sell you an umbrella made of rules. They thrive on emergencies because emergencies suspend logic. When people are scared, they'll accept anything, tracking devices, curfews, censorship, as long as someone says it's for their protection. Fear makes people stupid, and stupid people make great taxpayers. They don't solve problems, they rename them. Unemployment becomes job transition. Poverty becomes economic adjustment. Corruption becomes mismanagement. They shuffle words around like a deck of cards until nobody remembers what game they were playing. If the numbers look bad, they change the way they count. If the policy fails, they move the goalposts. There's no accountability, only announcements. Look at the economy. They crash it, then stimulate it with your own money. They bail out the corporations that cause the mess and send you a check small enough to make you think they care. It's a cycle, wreck, rescue, repeat. The economy's like a washing machine for the rich. They put in your labor, spin it with inflation, and take out clean profits. And when it leaks, they tell you it's your fault for buying too much coffee. And the media, they're part of it too. They sell the chaos like popcorn. Breaking news, something terrible happened again. They feed you fear in high definition. Every headline is a hook. Every broadcast a panic attack. And when the people are scared enough, the government steps in with the solution. More rules, more power, more control. You never notice the sleight of hand because you're too busy worrying about whatever new threat they cooked up this week. Government logic even applies to morality. They tell you violence is wrong, but they celebrate it with parades. They tell you stealing is a crime unless it's done through taxes or lobbying. They tell you lying under oath is perjury unless you're in Congress, in which case it's political spin. They hold you to a moral standard they abandoned decades ago. You go to jail for stealing a loaf of bread. They get reelected for stealing futures. And when it all starts to collapse, the wars, the economy, the healthcare, the trust, they don't apologize. They investigate. They form a committee to investigate why the last committee didn't investigate enough. It's a recursive loop of bureaucracy, a snake eating its own paperwork. Nobody gets fired, they get reassigned. The same faces, the same lies, the same circus. They love calling it public service, but there's nothing public and nothing that looks like service. They take your money to manage problems they create, and when they fail, they ask for more money to fix what they broke fixing the last thing. It's like hiring an arsonist to run the fire department, and somehow people still clap when they speak. They want you to think logic doesn't apply to them. They operate in a magical realm called policy. In policy, 2 + 2 equals whatever keeps the donors happy. In policy, wars bring peace, debt brings prosperity, and lies bring unity. They've turned contradiction into a science, a self-sustaining illusion where the solution always costs more than the problem and somehow solves nothing. They keep you busy arguing about symbols, flags, slogans, parties, so you never notice the system underneath never changes. It's not right or left. It's up and down. They're up there, you're down here, and the rules are different. Their logic is flexible, yours isn't. You forget to pay a bill, you get fined. They lose billions, they get funding. You lie on a form, you get prison. They lie on TV, they get applause. That's the beauty of government logic. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to make money. And the people who question it get labeled troublemakers. Because if too many people start seeing the pattern, the chaos stops working. That's why they keep it running. Endless debates, constant noise, fresh outrage every morning. Confusion is control. Every law they pass, every speech they give, every reform they announce, it's all part of the same script. Break it, fix it badly, sell it again. The more problems they create, the more indispensable they seem. Without crises, there's no need for saviors. Without fear, there's no obedience. Without contradiction, there's no government logic. You ever notice that every time the government says they're protecting you, you end up with fewer rights than you had yesterday? It's the oldest trick in the book. Wrap control in a flag, sprinkle it with fear, and sell it as safety. They call it security, but it's really surveillance. They say it's for your protection, but somehow you're always the one getting frisked, scanned, tracked, and taxed. That's not protection, that's management. You're not being protected, you're being processed. They love the word safety. Oh, they use it like seasoning. Sprinkle it on every law, every restriction, every invasion of privacy. It's for your safety, they say. You can't go 5 minutes without hearing that word. You can't board a plane, walk into a courthouse, or even log into a website without being reminded that everything's for your safety. But notice how safety always comes with a price tag. Your freedom, your privacy, your independence. Safety has become the polite word for submission. They've convinced people that freedom is dangerous, that you need supervision to make choices. They say, we're just keeping you safe. Safe from what? From yourself, from thinking too much? They install cameras on every corner, microphones in your phones, and chips in your devices, all to protect you from invisible enemies. Meanwhile, they're the ones collecting the data, selling the data, and then acting shocked when someone uses the data against you. But it's all okay because it's for your safety. You ever wonder why every time something bad happens, the first response is to take more rights away from everyone else? One lunatic does something stupid, and suddenly you need a new law, a new regulation, a new department to monitor everyone. That's the game. Use one crisis to tighten the leash on millions. They never waste a tragedy. They turn every fear into a law, every panic into a policy. And they're real clever about it. They make you beg for it. People start saying, yes, please, take my privacy. Just make me feel safe again. That's how they get you. Not by force, but by consent. And the protection racket works on everything. Health, money, war, even the internet. They say they're protecting your health, so they control what you can buy, what you can eat, what you can smoke, what you can drink. They say they're protecting your money, so they tax it, freeze it, and regulate it until it's barely yours. They say they're protecting your country, so they start wars that never end. They say they're protecting your mind, so they censor your speech. You notice how every protection involves less choice for you and more power for them? They don't want independent people, they want dependent ones. Dependence keeps you obedient. If you rely on them for safety, you'll tolerate almost anything. You'll accept searches, checkpoints, cameras, even censorship, as long as they call it protection. You'll line up barefoot at an airport while some underpaid agent rifles through your bag, all while the people in charge fly private jets with no security lines at all. It's not about safety. It's about reminding you who's in control. They even control language. They don't say spying, they say data collection. They don't say control, they say regulation. They don't say restriction, they say guideline. It's linguistic camouflage. They make the prison sound like a playground. If they told the truth, people might notice. But they never tell the truth. They tell the version that keeps you calm. The government doesn't protect you from threats. It protects itself from you realizing you don't need it. And when people do wake up and question it, they're labeled as dangerous, unpatriotic, or misinformed. They say, don't listen to those people, they're conspiracy theorists. Yeah, because apparently questioning authority is now a psychological disorder. The irony is that the more power they get, the more paranoid they become. They need to control everything, because deep down they know their authority depends on your fear. No fear, no obedience. No obedience, no power. Look at how they sell protection in schools. Metal detectors, cameras, lockdown drills. They're raising a generation that thinks freedom is suspicious. Kids grow up learning that safety means surveillance, that authority means protection. By the time they're adults, they won't even notice the cage around them. They'll call it home. The government doesn't have to enforce control with force anymore. It's psychological. You don't need bars when people build them in their own minds. And it's not just national security, it's personal security. They say they're protecting you from misinformation, so they control what you can say online. They say they're protecting democracy, so they ban voices they don't like. They say they're protecting society, so they track what you post, what you read, who you follow. They're not protecting truth. They're managing narratives. The goal isn't to keep you safe. It's to keep you predictable. Predictable people don't revolt, they renew their subscriptions. They've mastered the art of voluntary submission. You carry the tracker yourself now. It's in your pocket, buzzing, blinking, listening. You pay for it monthly. You bought your own leash and call it convenience. They don't have to install cameras in your home. You did it yourself for smart home security. They don't have to spy on you. You upload your life voluntarily. That's how deep the illusion runs. They've made control feel like comfort. And every time a new law passes, it's dressed in the language of protection, protecting the children, protecting the homeland, protecting democracy. You can't oppose it because who doesn't want protection? That's the trap. They build emotional walls around policies so you can't question them without sounding cruel. But every protection law is just another lock on your freedom. They say they're protecting your rights, but they're really protecting their reach. Governments love scared people. Fear is fertile ground for control. When people are calm, they think. When they're scared, they obey. So they keep you scared. Scared of terrorists, pandemics, hackers, migrants, neighbors. Doesn't matter who as long as there's an enemy. Every generation gets a new boogeyman. The names change, but the formula doesn't. Invent fear, expand power, repeat. You ever see what happens when people start feeling too free? They invent a new threat. Suddenly there's a crisis, a national emergency, a public health risk. You get the speeches, the press conferences, the laws passed in the middle of the night. And once they take a piece of your freedom, they never give it back. Freedom is a one-way street. Once you hand it over, it's gone. They'll talk about temporary measures, but temporary in government language means forever with a budget increase, and they justify everything with the illusion of care. They act like overprotective parents who never want you to leave the house. Don't worry, we'll keep you safe. Just don't go out of bounds. But when the government acts like a parent, the people become children. You're not trusted to think, decide, or risk. You're told what's safe, what's harmful, what's allowed. And most people accept it because it's easier to obey than to take responsibility. That's the ultimate trick. They've replaced responsibility with regulation. Real freedom comes with risk, but risk terrifies people. So they trade it for the illusion of protection. They get comfort, the government gets control. It's a perfect exchange, quiet, efficient, permanent. And when the system finally collapses under its own hypocrisy, they'll just say, we did everything we could to keep you safe. And you'll believe them, because by then, believing is the only freedom you have left. You ever notice how the world's full of believers but short on thinkers? Everybody believes something, but hardly anyone stops to think about whether it makes sense. That's not an accident. That's the way the system wants it. They don't want people who question, they want people who agree. Thought is dangerous. Thought is slow. Belief is instant. Belief can be manipulated, packaged, and sold. Thinking can't. Thinking gets in the way of obedience. So the government, the schools, the media, they all work together to make belief look noble and thought look rebellious. From the moment you're born, they start programming you. Here's what to believe about your country, your God, your history, your money, your rights. You memorize it, repeat it, salute it. You get gold stars for repeating, not for questioning. Schools don't teach curiosity, they teach conformity. They don't want kids who ask why. They want kids who ask how high. When told to jump, thinking takes time. And time is dangerous when people might start connecting dots. Belief is cleaner. Just nod and move on. That's why every system has its slogans. In God we trust. Support the troops. Stay safe. Short, simple, emotional, no thought required. Just belief. The trick is that belief feels good. It gives people comfort, certainty, identity. Thinking gives people headaches, doubt, and confusion. The government understands that. They know the average person doesn't want truth, they want reassurance. So they give you slogans instead of explanations, symbols instead of understanding. They build an entire society on belief. Believe the experts, believe the leaders, believe the data, believe the news, believe the party, believe the science, as long as it's their version of science. It's not about facts, it's about faith. Faith in authority, faith in the system, faith that someone smarter, richer, or more official knows what's best for you. And if you dare ask a question that doesn't fit inside the pre-approved box, you're labeled a troublemaker. Why can't you just believe like everyone else? Because belief doesn't need proof. It just needs repetition. That's why every generation gets a new belief system to follow. The old ones fade and the new ones take their place. But the structure stays the same. People still bow, still cheer, still trust the wrong people for the wrong reasons. Whether it's politics, religion, or media, it's always the same dance. Don't think, just believe. Because belief is loyalty, and loyalty is control. Once you get people to identify with an idea, you don't need to force them to obey. They'll police themselves. And belief is contagious. It spreads faster than logic ever could. Logic needs evidence. Belief just needs emotion. Logic takes effort. Belief takes comfort. You tell people something scary or hopeful enough, and they'll believe it even if it's ridiculous. That's why propaganda works. That's why advertising works. That's why entire wars are fought over invisible enemies. You don't have to prove a lie if people want it to be true. Governments figured this out centuries ago. It's not about information, it's about narrative. They don't need to convince you of the truth. They just need to make you believe their version of it. That's why they flood you with constant noise. News updates, political speeches, social media trends, it's not meant to inform you. It's meant to exhaust you. When you're overwhelmed, you stop thinking critically. You just pick the belief that feels safest and hold on to it like a life raft. And the system rewards belief. You get promoted for agreeing, not for challenging. You get followers for saying what people want to hear, not for saying what's true. You get elected by telling people what they already believe, not by making them think. Thought doesn't sell, belief does. Thinking makes people uncertain. Belief gives them identity. You can't build a mass movement out of thinkers. Thinkers ask too many questions. Believers just show up, cheer, and sign checks. Even religion got corporatized into this logic. Have faith. Don't doubt, trust the plan, don't question the book. It's the same formula as politics, just older and better marketed. The priests used to hold the Bible in Latin so nobody could read it. Now the politicians hold the laws in jargon so nobody can understand them. Different robes, same game. Keep the people believing, keep the power flowing upward. And the media plays its part beautifully. Every headline is designed to make you feel, not think. Outrage, fear, pride, grief. They mix emotions like a drug. When people feel, they stop analyzing. You can't manipulate a calm mind, but you can easily control an emotional one. They don't report to inform, they report to shape belief. They don't want you thinking, is this true? They want you saying, I believe it. You ever notice how people defend their beliefs like property? You question their ideas and suddenly it's personal. That's the sign of successful conditioning, when belief becomes identity. Once people tie who they are to what they believe, you can't change their mind. You can show them evidence, logic, reason, and they'll still reject it because it threatens their sense of self. It's easier to fool someone than to convince them they've been fooled. And the government counts on that. So they keep giving you teams to believe in, red versus blue, left versus right, this side versus that side. They don't care who wins because belief in the fight itself keeps you distracted. You'll argue for hours online about symbols while the real decisions happen behind closed doors. Thinking would ruin that setup. Thinking would reveal that both sides serve the same master, the system itself. But as long as you believe one side your savior, you'll never notice the strings. Schools, media, religion, government, they all teach one core message. Don't trust yourself. Trust us. We have the experts, the credentials, the data, the authority. That's how they keep you small. A thinker might question authority. A believer worships it. A thinker asks for evidence. A believer accepts statements. A thinker changes their mind when new facts appear. A believer calls that betrayal. Thinking is dangerous because it's contagious too, just slower. Once one person starts really thinking, others follow. That's why real thinkers get silenced, censored, or ridiculed. It's not because they're wrong. It's because they remind people that belief isn't truth. The system can't handle too much truth. It short-circuits the machine. And the saddest part, most people don't even know they've stopped thinking. They think they're informed because they read headlines or watch the news. But information without analysis is just noise. The government doesn't need to hide information anymore. They just bury it under so much garbage that nobody has time to dig through it. People feel informed but act like followers. That's not knowledge, that's hypnosis. Real thought is rebellion now. Thinking for yourself is the last radical act left. But it takes courage. Courage to be uncertain, to doubt, to not belong to a group, to say, I don't know and I'm going to find out. That kind of courage scares the people in charge because it spreads clarity, and clarity kills belief. And without belief, control collapses. That's why the system keeps you believing in countries, in leaders, in slogans, in the illusion that someone else is steering the ship. They need believers because believers don't mutiny. Believers keep rowing, even when the ship's on fire, because they're told it's patriotic. And if you stop and think too long, you might realize you're rowing in circles. But don't worry. They'll hand you a new flag to wave, a new fear to believe in, and call it progress. You ever notice how they keep telling you that you have a choice? Like that's supposed to mean something. You can vote, they say, with that proud tone, as if putting a little mark on a piece of paper once every few years somehow changes who's really in charge. It doesn't. The illusion of choice is the greatest magic trick ever pulled on the public. They don't need to take your power if they can convince you that you're using it. The system stays the same, the faces rotate, the speeches change tone, but the game never does. You think you're choosing leaders, you're really choosing salesmen. They give you two options, and both work for the same boss. It's like picking between two different airline meals. Both terrible, but one comes with a flag on the toothpick. You argue over which one's better, and they're laughing because you're missing the point. The menu doesn't matter. The flight path is already set. They tell you democracy means power to the people, but the people only get power when it doesn't threaten profits. You get to vote for the person who reads the teleprompter, not the one who writes the script. You think your opinion matters because they ask for it. They give you polls, debates, surveys, campaigns, a whole circus designed to make you feel involved. But behind the curtain, it's all handled. The donors, the corporations, the lobbyists, those are the ones casting the real votes, the ones that come wrapped in checks. You vote every few years, they vote every day with money. And guess whose ballot counts more? Elections are just a national therapy session. They let you vent your frustration, shout, cry, and feel like you've made a difference. Then, the next day, everything stays the same. The wars don't end, the taxes don't shrink, the prices don't drop, and the promises evaporate faster than campaign confetti. You're not electing leaders, you're selecting mascots. They slap new logos on the same machinery and call it progress. And the arguments, oh, they love the arguments. They want you fighting over colors, slogans, and party names. That's the point. Divide and conquer. As long as you're busy hating the other side, you won't notice that both sides are selling you the same story. They make politics emotional on purpose. It keeps you too busy to analyze. You'll spend hours arguing online about policies that were written by people you'll never meet, for companies you'll never see, serving interests you'll never benefit from. They even schedule the illusion like entertainment, election season, just like baseball or reality TV. You get the debates, the scandals, the predictions. The media plays the role of sports announcers. Who's up? Who's down? Who's trending? They analyze body language, tone of voice, wardrobe, everything except the truth, because the truth ruins the show. And you keep watching because it feels like something's happening. But the outcome's always the same. Government wins, people lose. They sell hope like it's a product. This time it'll be different. This candidate really cares. You hear it every cycle, and every time people fall for it. Hope is their best marketing strategy. It's renewable, it's emotional, and it keeps people docile. You're not supposed to notice that the change candidates turn into establishment puppets the moment they win. Once they get in, they meet the real owners of the country, and suddenly all that revolutionary talk turns into polite policy. It's not betrayal, it's initiation. They like to pretend elections are a battle between good and evil. They give you characters, villains, heroes, taglines, sound bites. It's a movie, and you're the audience. You cheer, you boo, you pick a side. And while you're emotionally invested in the show, the people backstage are signing contracts, writing bills, and making sure nothing truly important ever gets discussed. Because if people started asking about the money, the wars, the surveillance, the corporate handouts, the illusion might crack. You think your vote counts? Try voting against the banks. Try voting against the military budget. Try voting against corporate tax breaks. You can't. Those aren't on the ballot. They never are. The system isn't designed to represent you. It's designed to contain you. They give you the illusion of control so you don't go looking for the real levers of power. It's like giving a child a steering wheel in the back seat so they feel like they're driving. The politicians know the script by heart. They promise change, speak in emotional language, wave to babies, kiss flags, and talk about unity. They're actors, professional empathy impersonators. And every 4 years, people forget that the last batch of promises turn to dust. They reboot the same storyline with new cast members, and the public tunes in again, ready to believe. It's a ritual of national amnesia. And when someone comes along who isn't part of the script, who actually starts talking about real reform, the system eats them alive. They're mocked, silenced, or conveniently disqualified. The game only works if everyone plays by the same invisible rules. Real change is bad for business. The illusion of change, though, that's perfect. It keeps the people busy and the money flowing. They call it representative democracy. But who's representing you? The working person with 3 jobs? The student buried in debt? The family choosing between rent and medicine? No, your representatives represent their donors, their industries, their future board seats. You're not their employer. You're their product. You're the justification for their salaries, the excuse for their policies. They say, we're fighting for the people. Yeah, fighting over them, not for them. They even turn voting into a moral test. If you don't vote, you can't complain. That's their favorite line. As if marking a box every few years gives you permission to criticize corruption. They want you to believe the act of voting equals participation, when in reality it's pacification. It's a pressure valve. You feel like you've done something, so you go back to sleep. You can complain all you want. The system runs on complaints. It's designed to absorb anger and turn it into apathy. And don't you love how every candidate says the same things? We need unity, we need jobs, we need security. It's like they all downloaded the same script from the same think tank. Because they did. The only difference is the branding. One sells optimism, the other sells outrage. One says freedom, the other says fairness. But when it's over, both vote for the same wars, the same budgets, the same surveillance laws. If it were a TV show, it would have been canceled for being too repetitive. The truth is, power doesn't live in elections. It lives in boardrooms, banks, intelligence agencies, and corporate offices. The politicians are just customer service representatives for the real owners of the country. You complain to them, they file your grievance, and nothing changes. The owners don't take calls from the public. That's what democracy is now, a customer satisfaction survey for an empire. So every election, you go through the motions again. You debate with friends, wear your stickers, share your opinions, and feel righteous about your side. And when your side wins, you celebrate like something monumental happened. Then the bills keep rising, the wars keep going, and the rich keep getting richer. And you start to wonder, wait, didn't we vote against this? But by then, it's too late. The next show's already being written. The illusion of choice is what keeps the machine running. As long as you think you're participating, you won't rebel. As long as you think you're free, you won't notice the leash. The ballots are just props. The slogans are just scripts. The politicians are just actors. The system doesn't change because it doesn't need to. It's already perfect for them. You ever notice how real logic, actual, honest, straightforward thinking seems to get people in trouble? It's funny, isn't it? You can lie on television, manipulate data, twist words, and you'll get a promotion. But tell the truth just once, and suddenly you're a problem. That's because real logic threatens power. It cuts through the noise, and power hates clarity. Real logic doesn't play by their rules. It doesn't bend to slogans. It doesn't worship authority, and it doesn't care about feelings. That's dangerous to a system built on control. Think about how the world works. Governments thrive on confusion. They want you so tangled in jargon and contradictions that you stop asking questions. They drown you in bureaucracy, paperwork, acronyms, regulations, so much nonsense that even the people working inside the machine don't know how it runs. Because if you can't understand it, you can't challenge it. Logic simplifies. It exposes the tricks. It asks why when you're only supposed to ask how high. The minute you start using logic, you start noticing things you're not supposed to. You see how wars are fought for peace, how censorship protects freedom, how debt equals opportunity, how surveillance equals safety. Those contradictions are baked into the system. They sound crazy when you say them out loud, because they are. But that's the beauty of power. They repeat the nonsense until it sounds normal. And if you question it, they call you cynical, unpatriotic, or worse. That's how they protect the illusion. Look at the way they use language. Every word that sounds noble hides something ugly. Defense spending means war money. National security means government spying. Public service means private profit. They twist words so that logic becomes impossible. You can't even argue with them because the dictionary's been rigged. Real logic says if you need to change the meaning of words to justify something, it's probably wrong. But that kind of honesty doesn't make good politics. And notice how they make everything emotional. Logic is calm, patient, observant, but emotion? Emotion is chaotic, impulsive, easy to control. They keep you in a constant state of outrage, fear, or hope, because that's how you stop thinking. They want your heart racing, not your brain working. Real logic doesn't care about fear. It just looks at the evidence. And that's why governments prefer emotion. It's a better leash. They even train you to distrust your own logic. From the time you're a kid, you're told to follow the rules, not to understand them. You're taught obedience, not curiosity. In school, you memorize facts, but never question systems. You're rewarded for repeating, not reasoning. And by the time you're an adult, the habit is set. You take orders, you trust authority, you assume the people in charge know what they're doing. Real logic would ask, do they? But they've trained that question right out of you. Real logic also has this annoying habit of connecting dots. You notice that the same people who write the laws are funded by the people who benefit from them. You notice that wars start after certain companies get contracts. You notice that the people telling you to tighten your belt are the ones flying private jets. Once you see those patterns, you can't unsee them, and the system can't allow that kind of awareness. It spreads. Logic is contagious, and power survives by keeping people divided and distracted. That's why they stigmatize truth tellers. They don't argue with them. They discredit them. Call them crazy, dangerous, radical, or fringe. Anything to make you look away. They don't want a debate. They want silence. Because debates require logic, and logic exposes lies. It's much easier to drown you in noise than to confront a clear, simple truth. Governments know that real logic doesn't serve them. It serves people. It's independent. It doesn't need permission. You can't regulate it, license it, or tax it. Logic is free, and free things are a threat to controlled systems. So they give you fake logic, official reasoning. They make charts, statistics, talking points, and press releases. It looks intelligent, but it's scripted. It's not logic, it's propaganda wearing a lab coat. Take the economy, for example. Real logic says, if a country prints trillions of dollars, prices go up. But they'll tell you no, inflation is complicated. Real logic says if workers can't afford to live, the system's broken. They'll say the market will adjust. Real logic says if you're spending more on bombs than on schools, your priorities are backwards. They'll say we're keeping you safe. See how that works? Every time logic shows up, they bury it under a pile of nonsense dressed as expertise. They make you think logic is dangerous, that questioning the system makes you a threat. They'll say you're spreading misinformation or you're undermining trust. No, you're just using your brain. The real threat to them is an informed mind that refuses to be hypnotized by slogans. Once you start thinking logically, you stop needing leaders to interpret reality for you. That's the nightmare scenario for power, people thinking for themselves. And you'll notice, every system that claims to value truth has a limit. You can question small things, a tax rate, a policy, a politician, but start questioning the structure, the foundation, and the smiles disappear. They tell you to be realistic, which really means stop asking questions that make us uncomfortable. Real logic doesn't have boundaries. It goes wherever the evidence leads. That's why it's incompatible with authority. They also weaponize illogic. Every lie they tell becomes a building block in the structure of power. We need war for peace. We need censorship for freedom. We need debt for growth. Once people believe contradictions, they'll believe anything. Logic is like light. It exposes the trick, ruins the illusion, shows the wires holding the puppet. And they can't let that happen. So they make logic unfashionable. They make intelligence look boring, uncool, even suspicious. They flood your feed with noise, gossip, outrage, celebrity nonsense until you're too exhausted to think. They turn reason into entertainment and call it debate. Two talking heads yelling at each other on TV. That's not logic, that's theater. It's designed to simulate discussion without ever producing understanding. And yet, every great lie in history relied on people ignoring logic. Governments know that. They know that if people stopped reacting emotionally and started thinking logically, the whole facade would crumble. The empire would fall, not from bombs, but from clarity, because logic doesn't need to fight, it just needs to be heard. Real logic isn't illegal on paper, but it's treated like it is. The moment you use it to question authority, you become a target. They can't arrest you for thinking, but they can make you irrelevant. They can bury you in red tape, shadow ban your voice, drown you in propaganda. The result's the same. Silence the logic before it spreads. You might think, that sounds paranoid, but look around. Every time truth shows up, it gets labeled dangerous. Whistleblowers are traitors. Independent thinkers are extremists. Logic doesn't fit into the world they built, because the world they built depends on people not thinking too much. They don't need to outlaw truth. They just need to make people stop caring about it. Give them distractions, fears, false hopes. Feed them emotional junk food until they forget what real thinking feels like. Keep them busy arguing about symbols instead of systems. That's how you control a population, not with chains, but with confusion. Real logic is the ultimate rebellion. It doesn't shout, it doesn't march, it just sees. And once you see, you can't unsee. That's why it's treated like a crime, because a society full of logical people wouldn't need rulers. It wouldn't fall for manipulation. It wouldn't buy the lie. And that's the one thing power can't afford. A world that actually makes sense.